hmm All black everything. We back. We back. We back. We back. What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up, y'all? Thank y'all for tuning back in. All black everything. We doing the no that law. Last time we was here, we just gonna continue where we left off. We're not on the right to this music. Shout out to the boy Fabulous, King Fabulous, excuse me, the man. Not no boy. You know, Fabulous on this thing, man. Just vibing out to it. Instrumental style. While we read All Black Everything, No Doubt Love, first chapter. Right back where we left off. Here we go. And it says, Andy analyzes what he just learned. He says, okay, so for the First Amendment gives us the right to choose whatever religion we want, give out any printed materials that we want, and rally to protest or petition whoever we feel the need to be. I thought the First Amendment was only one that I knew, but I guess I was wrong. I thought it had something to do with saying whatever you wanted to say. Medger laughingly says, well, there is just one more objective we have to complete to conclude this lesson. Follow my instructions. Medger takes Andy to a movie theater and gives him instructions. I want you to go inside this theater, walk in a movie that's already playing, and scream out one of the chants that you heard today. Andy replies, you mean like there's a fire in here? Okay, so I guess I was right then. We can say whatever we want to say, right? Well, I was going to give you the lesson last, Medger states, but yes, the last component of the First Amendment is are allowed to say. And the interruption and says, anything, say, we could say anything we want to anyone we want to say it to, right? Watch how I do this. I'm going to scare these people in the theater, but they won't be able to do or say anything to me because of the law. You guys were right. I'm already understanding the power of the law. Medgar was about to stop him, but he decided that since he interrupted him while he was trying to explain the entire amendment, he might as well get the lesson himself the hard way. Mm-hmm. Get it the hard way, hard headed. Andy jokingly walked into the first movie that he saw playing already. He burst in the door and he burst open the door and yelled, "There's a fire in here!" Everyone in the room began to panic and immediately stampede out of the doors. They all screamed, "Fire! Everybody run!" Andy was Andy was enjoying every second of this big joke until the unexpected happened. All of the screaming, all of the screaming of the fire didn't go away like Andy thought. Instead, it got louder and spread throughout the entire theater. This caused a little riot, and two members of the theater staff were trampled on and killed due to the commotion. Andy wasn't smiling anymore, and when he tried to leave, he was recognized as the person who yelled out fire first. A crying lady said, "It was the man right there in the black jeans and orange hoodie. He yelled out fire first. It started all this mess." Andy replied, "But the First Amendment gives me the right to say whatever I want to say. I didn't mean that anyone harm to anyone. I'm sorry, I didn't mean any harm to anyone. But at the end of the day, it was just an innocent joke." The police arrived, heard the story from the crowd, and arrested Andy on the spot. Andy is angry and trying to communicate with Medger and Malcolm, but they are not responding to him yet. That good lesson. That's that good chapter one right there. Now we on to it. Chapter two. Pray and paranoid. Paranoid or pray, excuse me. My bad. Paranoid or pray, chapter two. Medgar is working on getting Andy out of jail. Malcolm tells Andy the story of the chameleon and the snakes. Paranoid or prey. And this is a good one right here. I really like this one. Malcolm begins. Now we're going to do things a little different from Medgar, Andy. I'm going to teach you about the Second Amendment by way of a good old African fable. Andy just stared at him as Malcolm continued. Back in the days in Nubia in 7520 BCE, while the Nile had the entire Sahara Desert completely full of acres upon acres of vegetation and wildlife, in the middle of the region in the swamp called Kafarata, Kafarata lived a community of reptiles led by a gentle and hardworking community of chameleons and the aggressive, lazy snakes in two very different colonies. After the second year of living with the same region, the chameleons realize that they are the ones doing all the hard work all year round. And then when winter comes along and they have to eat what they harvested, the snakes come along and demand that they share with them because they will die otherwise. And if they feel that they will die, they will kill off every last chameleon in the region beforehand. And this year began this chameleons held as this year began, the chameleons held a mandatory all hands on deck meeting to discuss the plans for this year's harvest. The chief chameleon approaches the podium and speaks as he changes colors as his emotions change in speech. Fellow brethren and sistren, we have a serious problem on our hands and we must rectify it as soon as possible. As you all know, we have been the righteous group of chameleons from the day we first inhabited this region, working extra hard for the reptiles who lack some of our talents by feeding them during the winter months, as we as well as providing decoys for anyone in need by diverting attention away from them when predators attack, then using our talents to escape unharmed. We do what we have to for ourselves and our entire community. But with that being said, we should also be ashamed of ourselves for allowing 2 consecutive years of disrespect of reptiles who blatantly take advantage of us. No reptile should ever let his kindness be mistaken for a weakness. No reptile should ever, excuse me, I just said that, huh? So instead, we should use our kindness as a weapon against those who mistake them as weak moments. So it has been decided that we will confront the snakes beforehand and end the free labor that we are providing them with them. Excuse me, providing them with. If they wish to learn our ways of harvesting or even help us out with some of their talents, they are more than welcome. But if they choose to threaten us again, we will just have to start focusing on defending ourselves against them and work just as hard in doing so. The entire community was cheering in excitement and changing colors with every clap, creating a beautiful array of tribal colors, red, green, and yellow. As they all instantly stopped clapping and cheering, the chief put his left fist up high, and it was all bright red. He didn't say a word, but he then pointed his finger in the direction of the snake colony, and the entire chameleon community marched in unison. They all transformed into the community colors of peace, green. When they arrived at the colony, the snakes seemed very shocked and confused about the visit. You see, no reptile dared to step foot in the snake's territory. They all feared the poisonous venom they threatened everyone with. But the chameleon showed no fear, and they still came in peace to address the issue that manifested. The chameleon, the chief snake stood up and yelled, "What in the swamp hell are you doing stepping forth in our venomous bowl? What's the purpose of this rude visit?" The chief chameleon calmly addressed him. "Well, we come in peace with an issue that must be solved. We can no longer supply the unfortunate with our harvest, as well as your entire community, who is completely able to harvest on its own. We are here to offer your entire community the education and the skills training needed to harvest like we do, and or the jobs that we will be tailored to the snake's talents and skills." The chief snake remained silent. He said, just stared into the community of snakes, watching to see which one of them would show approval of the offer. He spotted one of the captain snakes in charge of guarding the poisonous pit, place where the snakes recharged their poison, nodding his head and smiling. He quickly made an example of him. You find this offer for us warm? From this warm? The chief asked the captain. He nervously replied, Yes, chief, that I do. I have other talents besides scaring other weak reptiles. Clap. The chief snake bit off his neck so hard that bit his neck so hard that his head instantly popped off, right in the air as blood just squirted all over the chameleon. This is what I think of your offer, the chief snake said. We don't we snakes don't harvest, we feast off others' harvest. And if they have an issue with that, then they can die over that issue a lot sooner than they would have ever changed that fact. The chameleon community began to show true weakness, division, began to show its true weakness and division. When they are not in unison with their thoughts, their colors do not match, and they are easily spotted targets. Some chameleons raised up and turned bright neon red, ready to fight the snakes in their territory. Some chameleons kept their barren and stayed green and calm throughout the entire ordeal. The other chameleons were completely yellow and scared to death of the snakes. The red chameleons were slowly advancing, the green chameleons were keeping their position, and the yellow chameleons were quickly backing up. These unorthodox movements caused a panic with the snakes, and the chief of snakes yelled out, Attack! The chief chameleon instantly yelled out, Retreat! The entire chameleon community turned yellow and poisoned their scaly skin in a perfect, positioned their scaly skin in a perfect 45-degree angle to reflect the sun's rays off of them and directly onto the snakes. The snakes were blinded, and in the mix-up, the chief of the chameleons ordered one of his spies to sneak into the snake pit and steal as much of the sacks of poison as possible, while they kept the lights in their eyes, directing them away from the pit without the snakes realizing the scheme was in place. Once the spies and two chameleons cadres returned with the max load of poison, the chameleons dispersed and leave the snakes temporarily blinded and very angry. As the community is traveling back home, they have an emergency meeting about what just took place. The chief speaks, Brethren, sisters, we have tried to approach the snakes with peace, and they have showed us that our peace isn't good enough for them. It is now time to head back home to continue the harvest for the winter and begin focusing on defending our harvest simultaneously. We have confiscated some of the snake's deadly venom, and we will use it against them. We will have a group of guards, duty chameleons, blended in with the earth, guarding our harvest 24/7 with poison tip pins attached to their backs. This way, whenever the snakes come sneaking and creeping onto our land to raid our harvest, they will get a taste of their own medicine. All in favor? Turn brown. The entire community turned brown, but different shades of brown. The chief knew that this was another sign of community breaking down on its unity, but he also knew that he had to defend the harvest by any means necessary. Any means necessary. Now, although the snakes did not yet show up for the revenge, the community was in agreement that with the chief that the harvest needed to be protected from the vengeful snakes. They all knew that the snakes have a reputation of not being trustworthy. So even though they didn't initially come for revenge, they knew that it was possible for them to strike at any given moment. So it was agreed that one quarter of the workers would dedicate themselves to guarding the community, another quarter would dedicate themselves to guarding the harvest, and the last half would work twice as hard on for producing a healthy harvest for the winter. As a as the full month passed since the snake altercation, and some of the harvest worker chameleons began to feel that the harvest guard duty was a waste of time, one of them spoke out. Hey, fellow chameleons, we have all been chameleons dedicated to uplifting our community, as well as our fellow reptiles of the land. With that being said, we demand the right to voice our opinions, and my opinion is that we have all our worker chameleons doing what the best we can to gather up crops for the land harvest. We don't need to fear those snakes. They know that we are worthy adversaries and they only pick on the weak. They almost have fled from this region the same way we squared off on their territory. It makes no sense for us to continue to continue this double duty job while our co-workers are wasting time guarding what doesn't need to be guarded. The workers stopped and looked at each other in agreement. All marched over to the chief together and demanded a change to the plan. They barged into the chief village. Chief, some of your workers have a few words for you in your guard duty plan. Come out and chat with us, yelled one of the angry workers, chameleons. The chief peacefully comes out with to see what the problem is. He addresses the crowd of chameleons. What seems to be the problem? Why is it that our harvest production has to be halted at this moment? The leader of the crowd reptiles says, "We are tired of working twice as hard for the same harvest production while our co-workers are wasting time on guard duty for no reason." We're gonna leave it right there. We're gonna come right back. This is Poison or Prey, Know Thy Law, George Trim. Check it out. Just sharing information. Do your own research. All black everything. Appreciate y'all for checking it out. Like it, subscribe it, share it, subscribe it, like it. Peace and love.